Thank you, Martin, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure to be here, although I, perhaps uniquely in this room, do like snow, and I miss it. And I'm sorry to be in the only state of the country that doesn't have any snow on the ground. We've been asked to discuss practical aspects, and we've heard some stirring and eloquent defenses of Israel in the previous panel. I tend to be an offense machine. I don't defend Israel. I go on the offense. So what I'd like to do is, in my few minutes, cover two topics. First, to look at more closely who is behind the this is a tough word, delegitimization of Israel. And secondly, to suggest how we can go on the offense. Who's behind the delegitimization? Well, there are actually two main addresses. There's some minor ones. Palestinian extremists would be a minor one. The far right would be a minor one. But overwhelmingly, the two major ones are the hard left and the jihadis. The hard left would include such individuals as George Galloway, Noam Chomsky, Norman Finkelstein, organizations like ISM Answer, the Guardian newspaper, and so forth. They are engaged in a campaign of delegitimization that has been going on for years. It has different aspects, but overwhelmingly it focuses on, as you heard before, that Israel is not a member of the community of nations. To give you one quote, for example, from the Guardian newspaper, Israel, as it is constitutionally and legally configured, has no moral right to exist, and a single-state solution is the only way of achieving a practical justice. This kind of attitude is not limited to non-Jews. It's important to state that Jews have had a very important part in this. Indeed, it doesn't matter what your origin is, what your ethnicity is, what your religion is. It matters what your politics are. Here's Richard Cohen of the Washington Post a few years ago. Israel itself is a mistake. Here is Ilan Pappé, formerly of the Haifa University. He spoke at Oxford not long ago against the motion that Israel has a right to exist, i.e. Israel does not have a right to exist. Even Jewish leaders, communal leaders, such as Anthony Lerman, executive director of the UK's Institute for Jewish Policy Research, said in 2005 that Israel and Zionism are failures, and Israel should become a binational state. So the left is one category. The other category are the jihadis, the Islamists. Now, they are less interested generally in delegitimation and more in stirring up action against Israel. It's more military and less intellectual. One will hear from, on the one hand, Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, saying that the regime occupying Jerusalem must be eliminated from the pages of history, even as the centrifuges are churning. Or the head of Hezbollah, who says, can Israel be eliminated? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Israel can be eliminated as he's building up his stockpile of rockets and missiles. This duality, I think, is the key. And what I'd like to do is look in each of these two cases at the nature of the problem, how our side responds to the problem, and some policy recommendations. Now, the nature of the problem in terms of the left is that it doesn't like, it's highly critical of Western civilization. And it sees in the Muslims, the Islamists in particular, the anti-Israel types, allies. Here's George Galloway. The progressive movement around the world and the Muslims have the same enemies, unquote. Meaning Western civilization in general, the United States, Great Britain, and Israel in particular, plus Jews, believing Christians, and international capitalists. There's an alliance between the left and the Islamists, whether it be Hugo Chavez of Venezuela and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who have visited each other. To stick to Latin America, since we're in Miami, the son of Che Guevara, a man by the name of Camilo Guevara, has gone to Iran and said that his father would have supported Iran in its current struggle with the United States. Fidel Castro has gone to Iran and said Iran and Cuba can bring America to its knees. Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, otherwise known as Carlos the Jackal, is a far leftist extreme, has converted to Islam and has written a book called Revolutionary Islam. Then listen to how they talk in similar ways. Here's Harold Pintner, a late icon of the left, who describes America as a country run by a bunch of criminal lunatics. And here's Osama bin Laden, who says that this country is unjust, criminal, and tyrannical. Here's Noam Chomsky. He terms America, quote, a leading terrorist state, unquote. And Hafiz Hussein Ahmed, a Pakistani political leader, says the United States is the biggest terrorist state. They cooperate in meetings, they cooperate in other ways. Now, there are differences between the left and the Islamists, to be sure, very substantial ones. The left's position has historically been against organized religion, against the nuclear family, and against private property. Islamists are not concerned with that. They're concerned with Christianity and Judaism, which they feel superior to, and with women. Men are superior to women. These are very different concerns, and yet what you see is that the two sides don't really pay attention to where they differ. They pay attention in good tactical alliance way to what they agree on. Now, secondly, our side responds by saying that Israel is a good place. Israel is a great place. The causes that are dear to the left, you can find in Israel. You can't find it in the neighbors of Israel. Sexual freedom, abortion, gay rights, pornography, artistic license, atheism, blasphemy, pacifism, these are all to be found in Israel. They're not to be found elsewhere. Well, that doesn't work, because the left ignores its differences with the Islamists. The left similarly ignores its commonalities with Israel. And therefore, my conclusion is that if one is to do something about this alignment, this alliance between the left and the Islamists, one has to find wedge issues. These aren't easy to find. One has to highlight the differences between them, although they're not willing to see those differences. And indeed, it's been striking how, say, on the issue of the burqa, the wearing of a complete sort of black sheep over women, the left has been saying, well, it's cultural difference. Over female genital mutilation, female circumcision, you'll have Western anthropologists saying, well, legitimate cultural difference. Over freedom of speech and the right to talk about Islam and other topics, you'll find the left has capitulated to what I call the Rushdie rules. It's very hard to find issues that divide the two. The one that I see that works the best is, oddly enough, the issue of apostasy, the right of Muslims to leave Islam, either to become non-religious, atheist, or to convert to another religion. This is the one issue where the left and the Islamists really can't find common ground and really do disagree. I'm all the time in the search for other issues, but I haven't really found them yet. So one, that's the left. The Muslims are fundamentally hostile to Israel out of a sense that Israel is on land that is historically Muslim. That's a waqf, W-A-Q-F. Waqf is like a mortmain. It's a permanent possession of the Muslim community. The Jewish sovereignty is an abomination, is unacceptable. The unwillingness to accept Israel, the anti-Zionist impulse, has over the past century taken different forms, but has always had the same goal in mind, which is to prevent or eliminate a Jewish state. It in early days had a pan-Syrian quality, then a pan-Arab quality, then a Palestinian quality, and now an Islamist quality. But whatever the motivation and particulars of the anti-Zionist movement, it has always been to prevent or eliminate Israel. The Islamist movement is deeply anti-Zionist. It is a global phenomenon. It heightens anti-Israel animus. It seemed weaker maybe 10, 15 years ago. It is now stronger than ever, especially with a second wind to the Islamist movement in Iran. And our side has been generally oblivious to this, has not really seen this, has not really understood the depth of this Islamist movement and how it specifically pertains to Israel. I think this is a time for education about radical Islam. It is a phenomenon abroad, dealing with Israel, among other problems, but also domestically right here in Florida. That's by way of defense, but I also think there's an offense that's necessary. You can't win if you're always on defense. And if all you know is Israel, and all you can do is defend Israel, you can only get to the 50-yard line. If you want to win, if you want to score a touchdown, you have to go on offense. And going on offense means knowing more, means learning about the circumstances of Israel more broadly. I am a Middle East specialist. I have a PhD in Islamic history. My first book is on the 7th and 8th centuries, on early Islam in the 7th and 8th centuries. My focus is not Israel. I can't tell you details about Israel. I've got 3 books in Syria. I work on Islam. I wouldn't expect all of you to have PhDs in Islamic history, but I do think that knowing about Palestinians, about Egypt, about Tunisia, following what's happening in Tunisia, has potentially enormous ramifications. What's been happening the last few days in Lebanon, government fell, enormous implications for Syria and Lebanon, and therefore for Israel. Developments in Jordan, developments in Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Turkey has gone from being our stalwart other ally in the Middle East to being an ally, in effect, of Iran. If you want to go on the offense, you have to know about the larger picture, the larger Middle East and Islam. And then you have the premise from which to engage in action, to organize, to lobby, to influence. That, I think, is critical. So on the one hand, to sum up, I think it's a matter of focusing on who is behind all this trouble that you've been hearing about this morning. It is the left and the Islamists. They are the problem. And 2, I think ultimately what is most important is to understand the Middle East and Islam, to understand the circumstances in which Israel finds itself, in order so you can shift the topic away from defending Israel always to going on the offense, talking about Syria, talking about Jordan, talking about the Palestinians, Hamas, the PA. Then you can win. Thank you.